Hello everyone, and on today's video I'm happily joined by the lovely Natalie Louise Burrows, who is known as the Prevention Nutritionist. Natalie has her own business called Integral Wellness, and I thought it'd be really nice to get Natalie on so we can talk a lot about metabolic health. So Natalie's focus is majorly around sort of blood sugar, GLP-1, cardiovascular disease, and she's really passionate about preventing illness rather than just trying to pull back once that illness has occurred. So, Natalie, would you like to talk to everybody about what it is you do and how you came here?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Debbie. That intro really says it in a nice nutshell. My world has definitely come from the idea of what I want to prevent rather than something that I have experienced. So I've now been a registered nutrition practitioner for well over 5 years. I've run a clinic for the whole of that 5 years, and it's just gone from strength to strength, which I'm so pleased about, seeing people much more proactive in thinking about what they can prevent. And that really is where I've come from. I know a lot of people come into the nutrition and health world from a perspective of they've experienced something, they got some help with it, they were inspired, and therefore they've gone off to do it themselves. And I love those sorts of journeys, but I've not personally been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or heart disease or anything like that. But very much from a genetic standpoint, and if I look down my family tree, that is my future if I don't look after myself properly. And I often reflect on, if I'd have had all of this knowledge, I could have really helped my grandparents. But because I have all this knowledge, I now really support my parents, and I can really support myself, and I can look to help others who also really want that assistance. And I think that's probably the biggest thing with cardiometabolic illnesses when we're talking about blood sugars, blood pressure, cholesterol, heart conditions, atherosclerosis, atrial fibrillation, fatty liver, which comes into this picture as well. So much of that is asymptomatic. People don't know that they're experiencing these things. And if anything like signs and symptoms were to occur, my biggest concern with where we sit these days is that we normalize it so easily. So one of the key things around poor blood sugar regulation and insulin resistance is being fatigued, is waking up in the morning still feeling exhausted as if you haven't slept particularly well, getting hangry between meals or needing snacks, maybe getting headaches. And a lot of people are normalizing those sorts of things. Oh, I'm just always exhausted. And, we're calling people the snack monster, or calling people chocoholics. And we've become to make light of these situations when actually, if we were to listen to the body for what it's trying to say, which is the very foundational ability to function and go about our days to create energy at all times, whether we've eaten and we're using it to create energy, or whether we're in between meals and we've got to tap into stored energy to create energy to keep going. If we're not doing that particularly well, which is meaning we wake up exhausted or we can't go from meal to meal without snacking, rather than normalizing it, we need to really hear it for what it's saying. The body is always trying to talk to us. I think the way that modern life has gone, how busy we are, sometimes how disconnected we are from our own selves and what we're eating and what we're doing, has meant that there's a lot of ignoring of these signs and symptoms. And I really want to bring to light how somebody might be feeling, and actually how this is telling us something and we can do something about it now, rather than when you're sat in your GP's office in 10 years' time, say, and they're telling you that you've now got a diagnosis and would you like this medication?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? Because yes, everybody's busy. We're all burning the candle at both ends. We're, work pressure, life pressure, family pressure, finances, and it's easy to just go, I'm just working too hard. I'm just too busy. And explaining away those symptoms rather than actually looking to see, is this something that's genetically predisposed, or is it something that I'm feeding by the things that I'm doing? And it's, it's easy to just sort of get sucked in and not be aware of how what you're eating, when you're going to bed, how much you're drinking, how that all feeds in. And we're not about making people live a life of misery and never having a treat again, which I think is something that people sometimes think. I know when you're walking around the supermarket and people are like looking in your basket to see what you're buying, and it's that whole, I used to be sort of thinking, oh, I can't go down that aisle, my client's down that aisle, and it's that pressure, isn't it? But it's not about living a life of nunnery and not having any joy, but it's about appreciating that there's a place for that and a place for giving your body what it needs at the same time. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, and probably where the way that the wellness world has progressed, it's created quite an odd sphere of the fact that you have to now spend all this money and have a cupboard full of these things and have this machine you use in the morning and this light that you use at night. And there's validity across the spectrum at places. But really, the foundation of it is the food aspect. Can we just go back to basics? What we eat 2 to 3 times a day, what we actually feed ourselves are the tools to support our bodies and how they function. But actually nailing that 80% of the time means your body's going to manage the 20% of the time where you just kind of let loose. You're either having a holiday or you've got some friends coming over. And actually the wellness of that evening is the fact you're socializing, less so than the food or the alcohol that might be being consumed. But I think where this also gets confused is where people can't quite manage that 80-20 rule, is because sometimes they're a bit jaded on actually whether they're actually living the 80%, and the reality is they're probably more living 60-40, and therefore they're not feeling great. So we do have to have a bit of a realistic conversation with ourselves. We do have to open the cupboards, look in our shopping basket, and make a really fair judgment to our own selves, not to each other, but to ourselves, as to how much effort am I actually putting in here? And this is, I think this sort of flows into the other thing that I'm worried about, which is we've kind of made food become really inconvenient. So the rise in convenience foods has made it as if actually creating a good meal from scratch is really inconvenient. And I don't take away from the fact of how busy we are. You and me, Debbie, are both very busy people.
Absolutely.
To find the time to cook is an ask of itself in the day. But we're also really respectful as to the value of food to do the busy life that we want to do. And I kind of want to bring a bit of a bit of a realism to the fact that you can't keep slamming your body into the busyness of work and the hecticness of family life and then just expecting a week in the Costa del Sol to sort you out for the next 6 months. It's not going to work like that.
No.
We do need to value the food that we put on our plate to the 80%. And to give ourselves time back that is of value. It's not a waste of time to spend 3 hours in the kitchen meal prepping for the week ahead. It's truly a great use of 3 hours to do that for your body, to then have a great week and to set yourself up well. And I think we've just got to manage some of the language and where some of our sort of mindsets have gone on just the foundations of good food, while protecting a little bit of 20% and just, having that good balance.
This is it, and I think that's where we can come in, isn't it? Because there are ways of having healthy food that doesn't take a lot of prep. There are ways of having healthy food that cooks while you're at work. It's about working smarter, not harder, isn't it? So it's not about becoming a cordon bleu chef, but it's about, how can we get more fruit and veg into the diet? If that means having some frozen veg that's ready to go on the days where you've got less time, then so be it. Using slow cookers, having, there's lots of meal prep services now where everything comes partly done and you just put it together. There's lots of ways to eat healthily without spending hours and hours every night in the kitchen, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think it's making that work for the individual's life. We've all got very different lives and very different setups and very different skills in the kitchen as well. I think people are often really surprised that I'm not a massive cook. My husband is a brilliant cook. I'm not. It's not where I love to be, but I love buying good food. I love understanding ingredient quality. I love understanding the therapeutic value of foods. And I love bringing all that into the house. And then I get my husband to help me out with creating it into something really good. And that might be down to being dyslexic and I've never been able to read a recipe to the T. And therefore, whatever I create, I don't know what it is, but it might be all right. So you don't have to be this sort of master chef, and you don't have to have this skill. You don't have to go off and learn to cook. So often it's a case of taking something classic like a spag bowl and actually just making some changes to making its nutritional value even better. And I love that side of teaching because that's how I live. You know, taking a classic fajita kit, don't buy the fajita kit. Let me help you with the different herbs and spices to mix together to create your own version at home, which is just as simple. And then you've got rid of a load of rubbish. It's the basics like that that we can go back to without it being too arduous. And yes, loving frozen veggies and things that you can batch cook and stick in the freezer for times when time is not on your side, but good health and good nutrition is still required. So yeah, absolutely, we need to take away this idea that it's always an arduous effort, or that it's a complete inconvenience. You can really make it work.
Yeah, and I think when you're preparing food and cooking food from scratch, it can be nice. It doesn't have to be this boring meal. And I know we always talk about the benefits of different herbs and spices from an impact on the body. So it doesn't even mean that getting good health needs lots of supplements, because food, a lot of these supplements are just foods. So if we incorporated more foods, we'd naturally be supporting our body and our cardiometabolic health and saving money without spending countless pounds on a supplement.
Exactly. And I think actually that's probably where I absolutely love cardiometabolic health in all the right ways, is that it's the reason we have such poor cardiometabolic health, genetics aside, because that's a small percentage of this conversation, but it does exist, but it's a smaller percentage, is because of food and lifestyle factors. They are a massive driver of cardiometabolic processes. So it really does take us right back to, well, if that's the driver, how do we bring that how do we actually address that driver? And it goes straight back into, what are you buying in the supermarket? What are you preparing in your kitchen? How often are you outsourcing that to a takeaway, a drive-through, a restaurant, etc.? And actually, how do we go back to basics? Because it's basics that have been a massive causer of this continual rise in type 2 diabetes and heart attacks and all of the complications that come with it. So it is a real love of actually, well, it can feel so big. How do I address heart disease? It feels massive. How do I manage type 2 diabetes? Well, actually, going back to the kitchen does such a massive amount of work for this. And then we can look at where any additional supplementation to a good diet can be of value as well, to either encourage the process, take you out of a concerning situation, increase some of the nutrient status that food's going to take a long time to fill that void. All that good stuff. But foundationally, food is so core within this cardiometabolic picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's like sometimes supplements give you the energy to make better choices, and it sets you on that journey. It takes you out of that danger state into something that the body's functioning a little bit better. But it's not a substitute for getting those basics right. And I think, thinking of my own journey, that actually not eating regularly can be just as harmful as eating the wrong food. So you can eat the best evening meal you want, but if that's your first meal of the day, then from a cardiometabolic sort of blood sugar perspective, once you hit that glorious phase that is perimenopause, which you've yet to hit, Natalie, but once you get to that, what you get away with when you're younger, unfortunately, as you get older, you no longer get away with. And then couple that with stress and poor sleep, and before you know where you are, it's all adding up, isn't it? So it's really important for people to understand that, you can think that you're living healthily, eating healthily, but there are still those lifestyle factors that play a role as well. And that's something you're quite passionate about explaining. It's having that whole, let's have a look at what it is you're doing that isn't serving your body and giving you the best chances that you could have.
Absolutely. And actually, you've highlighted something there that I think comes up a lot for me with conversations with clients in clinic, and just when I'm out either speaking at events or things like that people will often say things like, but I've always eaten this way. I've not changed how I've eaten, but my body's responding differently. but my friends can eat this and get away with it. Why can't I? And there can feel an element of, I feel like I'm being really hard done by. And look,
Yeah.
I've got a set of genetics nobody would want to buy off me. Not in a million years. From type 2 diabetes to gout to high blood pressure to a heart condition to high cholesterol to dementia and to an autoimmune condition. If anyone wants to purchase it, let me know. It's up for grabs because I didn't really want it. I've got it. So I could sit in the same camp. It's all right for some, but it's not all right for me. But they haven't got my genetics.
Mm.
And they might not be the same age that I am. And they might not be living the same lifestyle that I am. So also, they might not actually be that healthy. But if you haven't, I've always say to someone, if you want to believe you're healthy, never turn up to a doctor's. Never get your blood tested. Like, that's a way to, I've never been to the doctor.
Ignorance is bliss, isn't it?
That's one way to do it. But the sad reality is we're all made very differently. Our journeys through life to get us to where we are today have all been very individual, from whatever happened from the moment you were being created inside your mum to delivery and onwards is all going to be very unique. And then you are not the same person you were 10 years ago or 10 years before that. So you might be trying to do the same thing, but you're not the same person. So the same result is not going to happen. And there is no point judging yourself against somebody else because they are not you and they're not living the life you are. Keep the energy very much contained for how you're going to be. Don't outsource it to thinking about how much better or worse it might be for others. Very much focus on what you can control. And that is you and your health and nutrition. I think that can be sometimes a hard pill to swallow, or, now I've got type 2 diabetes, or now I've been told I've got heart disease. I can't do this, but I always wanted to do that and I always liked doing that. That's not the life you're now living. And this is where goals and finding our why and finding what type of life we want to live and how we want to feel every day is really important, because that's going to be the thing that keeps us moving through stuff that feels initially difficult until it becomes a habit, an autopilot, and it actually feels quite easy. And I promise people, it really does. But the consistency that's required to get you to a point where it feels autopilot and a habit and easy is the stuff that feels sticky and difficult and not so comfortable. And if we can accept the fact it's not going to feel comfortable and accept our reality, but it's going to get us to that goal, get me to living that life and the way I want to be, it can help us through those motions.
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, it's not 0 to hero overnight, is it? It's, let's pick a few things that we can do really well, and you'll see the impact from that, and then that will spur you on to doing other things. And some of this is not as bad as you expect it to be. It's like once you get into something and you go, do you know what, actually it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I've joined a over 50s exercise class. It's like a circuit class, and I really enjoyed that. But at the beginning, it's like, 6:20. I've been working all day. Can I really do this? But actually, walking out at 7:00 when it's done, it's like, do you know what? Actually, yeah, that's really made a difference. I feel better. I look better, and it's not been as bad as I expected it to be. But we don't expect people to do everything in one go. And that's what we're here for, isn't it? To support people and sort of say, right, well, what can you do? What can you easily incorporate that's going to get you that quick win, that's then going to give you the energy to do the things that you want to do? Because nobody wants to work Monday to Friday and then cabbage in the house at the weekend because they've not got the energy to do anything.
Exactly, because then you're just working your whole life, and actually that's not a life well lived. You need to do all that fun stuff. And you're right, I think when things are unfamiliar, when we're changing things, they're unfamiliar, they're new, they naturally come with a sense of apprehension. That's a really understandable biochemical pathway of your brain saying, I don't know what that is. So it could be scary, it could be unsafe. It's a very protective mechanism. It's for you to have rational thought to override that, to override it in a way that still feels safe. You're going to buddy up. You're going to go to a class that's designed for you and your age range or whatever that is, to make it as safe as possible, but to also be able to rationally think, I'm going to give it a try and then I'm going to make a decision. And you do have to pick the thing that you're most motivated to do first, or the thing that feels least scary or least arduous, to get the ball rolling, to create some evidence that change is possible. And the one thing I love to tell people is that when we're changing foods, or maybe taking sugars or sweeteners out of drinks, things like that, or dropping the can of Coke or whatever it is, or dropping a coffee, taste buds change every 11 to 14 days. And if you can just do something for 2 weeks, the ability for you to struggle to go back is really incredible to see. And I see this all the time in clinic, people who can't drink water without squash and now can't ever imagine having squash again because it's so disgusting to them, the way it tastes. People who couldn't have a day without a can of Diet Coke or whatever fizzy drink of their preference, many are available. And now the idea that they have a sip and they can't bear the flavour. If you give yourself a chance, your body will change and you will change your palate. But while we continue to deliver the same flavours, whether it's the sweetness or the saltiness or the fattiness, whatever it is, your palate will keep demanding what it knows and what is familiar.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to finish on. I think is that, you know, the more we do something, the easier it is to keep it. And I think, you know, I quite often now wander around and think, oh, it's Friday. I think I'll have a treat for after my tea. And 9 times out of 10, I don't buy anything because I'm looking and thinking nothing appeals. And then that one time in 10 that I buy it, I have a couple of mouthfuls and think, it's not worth the calories. It's not worth the sugar. It's just not doing it for me anymore. And it's just, you just have to get to that point, don't you, of going, do you know what? And then some days if I eat it and it does it for me, then great. But 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't anymore. And it's finding joy in other ways, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Find joy in other ways. Find stress relievers elsewhere as well. So a lot of these things are soothing and a moment of stress, a moment of fatigue, and frustration. Find other things that are non-food related if food is the thing that keeps tripping you up on your goals. There are so many other things out there that can support you in those times of need and keep you focused on the one thing that you're trying to change in that moment.
No, that's great. I'm really happy you joined me today, Natalie. I think we've had a really good discussion that might hopefully inspire people to start thinking a little bit more about making changes to support that aging process. You know, there's so much around the longevity space of this supplement, that supplement, and the other supplement. But if you've not got those basics, then no supplement is going to do that. If somebody wants to work with you, Natalie, how can they do that?
Yeah, of course. So anyone's welcome to follow me on Instagram under the Prevention Nutritionist. But the clinic Integral Wellness is also on Instagram, and the website is integralwellness.co.uk. There's me and my lovely team supporting individuals on a one-to-one basis in a variety of different ways, depending on a person's needs. So they're very welcome to come and find us, either have a chat to us on social media or book a completely free call on our website, and we can just see what is the right next step for you on your journey with your goals in mind.
Perfect. I will put your website into the comments section so that people can find it as they're watching. I hope those of you watching the video have enjoyed it. I'd really love it if you subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free to pop a like on this video, pop any comments in the video that you like, and obviously we'll pop back. And if you've got any questions, I'm sure we can answer those for you. And hopefully I'll see you and maybe some other lovely practitioners in another video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. I edit the